apologizing, couldn't make it today. We thank the hostess, Lucille Glassman. Les is not here, so she's also the photographer, the assistant of Les, who's filming every bit he can, here and there and everywhere, has many interesting things.
Our speaker today, Liane Magamama.
Wakabayashi.
You have to help me with that.
It's close enough.
Liane has a most intriguing story to tell us about her way in life. It started in New York. Somehow there was Hashem was guiding her to go to Japan, which is a very unusual thing for a New York Jewish girl to do. But there she went, and she was fascinated, and she was captivated. And the life in Japan is what I'm most fascinated to hear about myself. And there, Liane met a Chabad family, and they influenced her life very, very extremely. So this is the story we're waiting to hear, and I will enjoy very much it, and I introduce Liane to you with great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Appreciate that introduction. Can everyone hear me?
Can you stand?
Yes. Okay. So I'll stand. I'll hold on to the chair to keep myself balanced. And just tell you a little bit about me before we begin. Yes, I'm from New York, but it's a little bit more complicated because I was born in Montreal, where my parents met. My mother is from London, my father from a small town near Bucharest, Romania, called Braiila. And so I was raised in New York as an immigrant. I didn't become a citizen until I was 16. So this question of identity, of who am I and where do I belong, was always with me. This kind of, because it took so many sentences to explain why I wasn't American when I was a kid. And through some amazing lucky chance, I met my future boss, who was a Jewish American, the son of a quite well-known conductor, who was completely reformed, pretty much like my family. His grandchildren are in the IDF now, Orthodox Jews. So it just goes to show you that eating ham and cheese on Yom Kippur did not stop the children from moving forward. And I think that's part of my story too, is that it through some, amazing blessing of Hashem, we're not victims of our life circumstances. We can move out of them. And being Jews, there's always chances to move beyond the cards that we were dealt. And so this is very much a story of how I was able to move on in, of all places, Tokyo, with, of all people, Hasids, after marrying a Taoist. A Taoist is somebody, in my case, he was a practicing acupuncturist, shiatsu specialist, and Chinese herbal specialist, and very spiritual, because the roots of Eastern medicine are spiritual. They go back 5,000 years, and they're very connected to observation of nature. And this was something that I wish I had gotten in Judaism when I was a child, because it would have been much more fascinating to understand that Judaism and the Psalms and Torah is very, very observant of the cycles of nature and respectful of that. So that was fascinating once I began to see those connections. And so I was able to return to Judaism in Japan because Taoism and Buddhism and Shintoism prepared me, funnily enough. And so I saw the correlations, and that really opened me up wide to the possibility of a return. And I would say something I observed among a lot of my Jewish friends were going in a Buddhist direction. And that's the thing to do. They found that in Buddhism there was this kind of peace, serenity, meditation that they were looking for. But what I saw lacking was that there was nothing to give to the children if you follow a Buddhist way. What are you going to do? Tell a 4-year-old to meditate? It's time out, meditate. You can't do that. So it was really clear to me that there was so much in my own tradition, whether I knew it or not, that there was there to be tapped, to be understood. And so the Hasidic family, the Chabad family in Tokyo, were my role models. And to make it really interesting, they were young enough to be my children, had I married at 17 like they do, if you know what I mean. So there was this generational thing that my teachers were like my children in some respect. And I thought to myself, how profound that they're so advanced in their wisdom, that they've got so much spiritual awareness and chesed, kindness, and non-judgmental acceptance of all kinds of Jews. I said, who are they and how does it work and what makes them tick? And so I was as much fascinated by their way of being. Their way of being led to their way of following Torah. That was the introduction, that I was fascinated by that. So I'd like to read from a section of the book where you can meet Aki. Actually, his Ichiro in the book. His real name is Aki. He's called Ichiro. We're divorced now as of last year. We were together 28 years, married 26 years. And I have to say, I love telling the story. He loves the book so much that he printed 500 copies. He gave 100 copies to Chabad of Tokyo. I don't know how he's going to line his walls with the other 400. And now he's introducing to people, hi, I'm Ichiro. So he approves of the book, which is really great. It was my intention to write a story that celebrates a long marriage and really a big effort to do the best we could for ourselves and our children before it was clear that we couldn't anymore. So how does a nice Jewish girl from New York end up meeting and marrying this guy? So I thought I'd read to you from this chapter. Okay. So I start each chapter with Psalms, because Psalms really helped get me through hard times, because it's easy entering this unfamiliar world, but the tests got harder and harder. So I start this chapter with the Psalm. From his dwelling place he surveys all the inhabitants of the earth. It is he who fashions the hearts of them all. He notes all their doings. Psalm 33. Chapter 2. Tapped by the Taoist. In Tokyo, I was in adventure mode, so I figured why not go all the way and try traditional Oriental medicine as well. I followed my friend Lalenia's handwritten map to reach the White Crane Eastern Medical Clinic on the second floor of a mint green tiled building. Tall camellia bushes blossoming with waxy red flowers stood sentinel from a long balcony. I didn't know what to expect of a Taoist clinic, but the abundance of nature was inviting. Inside the clinic, a receptionist with shiny, long, straight hair, a model of fitness and intimidating good health, wearing a white nurse's uniform, handed me a key to a locker and told me to change into pale green surgical gown and red polyester basketball trunks, an odd combination if ever there was one. The receptionist then escorted me into the treatment room. Therapists were moving around with implements I'd never seen before, like cupping tools to stimulate the back and heating lamps to warm the stomach. Cigar-shaped burning moxa sticks clouded the room with smoky herbs to stimulate energy lines in the body that you can't see or even prove exist. Skinny, bearded therapists dressed in martial arts uniforms, white tops and black bottoms, stooped over narrow massage beds lined in a row. Patients covered in large towels lay in between layers of pink toweling and waited my turn to be seen by Incho Sensei, the clinic chief, and Lalenya's respected friend. I felt so quiet inside, I could hear myself breathe. When Incho Sensei approached me, he smiled warmly. He was wearing black pantaloons and a crisp white blouse like the others, as if he'd fallen through a rabbit hole and walked out of a feudal samurai household. A farmhouse held up with time-varnished dark wood beams and sliding paper doors overlooking rice fields. He had a wisp of a beard. His salt and pepper hair was greased and tied in a ponytail. He could have passed for a television star on a popular Sunday night history drama, except we were in a room with fluorescent lighting and concrete walls. The only thing missing was his sword. Incho Sensei was accompanied by Ichiro, a carbon copy of himself but younger and with a fresher wisp of beard. Hello, my name Ichiro. I, the translation. I grinned from ear to ear. You're a very fine translation, I winked back. He spoke with a charming lilting accent as if he had learned to speak English while on the beaches of southern India. Ichiro smiled and bowed. I liked his manners, a real gentleman. His master placed his right hand in the air over the pink towel that covered me. His fingers moved like marionettes over my belly. Ichiro explained that Incho's hand was responding to the heat within me. In this way, Incho Sensei diagnosed that I had a tired intestine. I was overindulging in sweets, and daily stress was affecting my liver more than a bottle of wine, and I didn't even drink. Well, hardly. It was all a bit overwhelming, like being a contestant on the game show This Is Your Life. Incho Sensei appeared to know me inside out. When Incho Sensei finished the exam, he turned me over to Ichiro for treatment. As he moved closer, I saw that his square glasses were hitched to a rather attractive face, bright and round as the moon. He had a black widow's peak that pointed to a scar between sparse eyebrows. His beard was short, or maybe it was young. When Ichiro smiled, I wondered why his parents had never bothered to fix his teeth. Ichiro, meaning firstborn, the serious one, so you can trust in me, he chuckled, delighted by his attempt to joke in English. Ah, the first fruit of your father's manhood, I laughed back. Fruit making body cold, he said. Well, he didn't get my sense of humor. So much for firstborn son jokes. Incho saying your condition not good, not bad, but he reading you're tired. Burned out, I admitted, as I thought about all the late nights that I'd spent typing up articles. It was my biggest dread that I would not meet a newspaper deadline and the Japan Times would have empty columns on its arts and education pages. Burned what? He asked. Burned out means exhausted. Ah, you meaning culture shock. His words surprised me. Culture shock. I thought that a frenetic pace of working to build up a newspaper portfolio, given the opportunity, opportunity was what any self-respecting writer would do. Perhaps Lalenia had been right. I didn't know how to relax. Ichiro pressed deeply into the base of my spine. Ouch, I said. Shiatsu good for circulation. I'm living outside my culture, my comfort zone. Maybe you're right. I'm an illiterate in Japan, and this is a culture shock. I paused to let the truth sink in. It's humbling to have to ask for help. So you don't liking ask people for help, Ichiro said, as his elbow dug deep into my buttocks. Touch without pleasure. This was my introduction to shiatsu. No, I don't like to ask for help, but I accept it. Look, I'm here at the White Crane Clinic today, aren't I? Ichiro put a finger across his mustached lip and studied me the way you would eye a beached baby whale. Curiosity mixed with pity. Look, I'm afraid of needles, I said as I pushed away the needles from his fingers. Okay, no needles. He said it with such finality that I was stunned. He didn't try to persuade me at all. You look disappointing, he said, and he was right. Disappointing. This way of talking was cute and innocent. He was tall and thin as a rail, and I could just make out through his thick glasses that he had beautiful pale brown eyes, wide as almonds. I thought you would try to sell me on the benefits of acupuncture. No needing rush. I returned a few days later. This time Incho-sensei initiated me to acupuncture, needling around my lungs. The needles tingled, but it didn't hurt. I told Ichiro, who was translating again. He tugged on his wispy beard as he searched for the words in English to explain simply the complex Taoist ideas behind the White Crane Clinic's approach, not only to shiatsu, but to the much more comprehensive field of traditional Oriental medicine. According to the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, the author of the Taoist classic Tao Te Ching, all of life could be understood from a direct observation of nature. Many things looked like opposites, male and female, hot and cold, black and white, but they were all really related, and neither had meaning without the other. The Taoist symbol represents opposites, yin and yang, that complementing each other and making a whole. Together they making harmony. You coming from America, a yang culture. Americans friendly, opinionated, and individualistic. We Japanese, we shy in people and get along in society because we working in groups. You see, we both needing each other, Ichiro said as he returned my locker key, brushing his hand lightly against mine. What an interesting man. I was 6 weeks short of my 30th birthday. My younger sister Talia had just announced her engagement. My mother had announced hers to Liane, husband number 2. And my marriage prospects were dwindling, according to my grandmother. We take a break there? Any questions or response?
Have you had any alternative treatments in the States? Or?
Before that?
Yeah.
Actually, I had gone to a kinesiologist who is working with...
That's colour, isn't it?
No, actually energy. Is working with energy. And so I was kind of initiated through kinesiology, but this was needling and shiatsu and the moxibustion. It was the heat lamp, so it was very different.
Is this part of Japanese culture where most people come to a clinic like this to have, or is it only...
That's a good question, because in the old times, yes, Eastern treatments are generally not covered by medical insurance, although Chinese herbal medicine is, so you can get from your Western doctor Chinese herbs. He'll write a prescription. He'll check his his guidebook and see which one and point, but he's not an expert in the same way that an Eastern clinic would be. I would say that people go to Eastern medicine, two types. Acupuncture, shiatsu, they go because things are not working for them in the other system. And sadly, they're desperate. They've been written off because they have cancer or they have something so serious that they go for anything. And this clinic is very famous. It's had a lot of coverage. It's over 40 years, this clinic. So it's known. It's very well known in this field. The other type of person who goes are traditional old people who just grew up with it, but they're getting fewer and fewer. You know, it's more, I would say, the kind of.
And the Japanese live very long lives, don't they? They have records of living to 100.
Some do. And I would say the ones who have very tight communities, kind of like this Emunah group, they're bonded, they know they're going to see their friends, they socialize. Those are the ones who are much more likely to have long lives. My mother and my ex-mother-in-law is 85. Her sisters are 97 and 98 and still going strong. The Okinawans were said to be the longest lived in the world, and I went down and did research and wrote an article for an airline magazine about their longevity. And the key, they said, is don't live with your children. Number one. And number two, laugh a lot with your friends. You're with your friends, your community. And they play gate ball. They're 90 years old and they're doing a gate ball and they're learning. They're doing dance lessons. They're still learning. And this is something that I loved about Japanese society. I saw it with my in-laws too. Well into their 70s, 80s, they're learning. They're learning or they're teaching. So this is something that's, I would say, a great secret to their.
Do they connect up their pins and needles and so on and combine it with diets also?
Absolutely. It's a very big part of it, especially at this clinic, that you spend almost all your time confessing what you've eaten while you're getting your treatment. No more Coca-Cola, no more fizzy drinks, cut down on caffeine, sugar bad for the liver, sugar bad for the kidneys, you know, all the going on and on. You think, gosh, what a miserable life by the time I'm through with it. But then you follow their instructions and if you feel better, you think, oh right, maybe this is worth it, if I'm actually feeling energetic. And I would say for people especially who suffer from depression or some kind of mental imbalances, cutting way back on the sugar and refined food is really, really important.
I saw that also. Shall we say green tea from the morning to the evening? Things like that, so weird or way out that is difficult for just general population to follow, that they suggest that you should go into the weirdest herbs also and change your diet.
It depends on the person. It really depends on what they're doing already. So, but green tea, remember, keeps you up at night. So there's a limit to what time you can drink the green tea.
Alternative medicine has become very widely used in Israel too.
I know. I go
Hadassah Hospital has someone who's a Dr. Toledano who's in charge of alternative medicine.
And they're very good here, I must say. They're very good. Did you have a question?
Yeah, are they vegetarian?
No, because during the Meiji Reformation in the 1860s, the country was actually encouraged to eat meat, to grow taller, be more Western in build. And so Japanese are quite tall these days. Yeah. Although in '85, when I went for the first time, the men that I was meeting, I was interviewing these heads of corporations, they were tiny. And I mean, I'm not the hugest, but for me to be eye level with some of these executives was really surprising. And the reason was the war deprivation. They didn't have enough food during the 4 years. So that was, and so they compensated by eating a lot of meat afterwards.
Can you raise your voice slightly?
I'm trying. It may be sitting closer. Is that? Yeah. Because we've also got the
Outside.
interference from the
Noise.
outside, so we're trying my best. Okay.
Perfect until about a minute ago. Screaming.
Yeah.
The children play.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Liane, I've been reading your book, and you've got this wonderful sense of humor. And I wanted to know if the Japanese appreciate your sense of humor. If they have,
if they
sometimes
had,
it didn't,
Lucy,
it kind of
if
backfired
they
on
had, I would still be married.
you. Really? Is it as bad?
Absolutely. That was a crushing. That he just didn't get my sense of humor, and I didn't get his. Thank goodness my kids do. And his mother and I would laugh and laugh and laugh. For some magical reason, she and I just clicked. But one of the reasons that we were always laughing is I would bring little presents to her house, and she'd say, "Yeah, you don't have to bring strawberries." And then I'd walk in the kitchen there with the strawberries. "Oh, you don't have to bring eggs," and there would be the eggs. Whatever I brought, she always had it on the counter. It was uncanny. It was. Speaking to it, does it
Oh,
help?
that's
If it helps, yes.
yes, it makes
Very
a huge
good. Now what do I do with it?
I'm going to put it around your neck.
Okay.
No, put that on, if you can hold it on the table. Just see if it will work. I don't know if it will work.
Okay, but I think it's meant to be.
Around your neck a bit.
Okay, is that better? Better? How's that? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
much better.
Better. All right. Good. Good. So the thing about the humor too is that's something I shared with my mother. She had a pretty riotous sense of humor, and that also helped me write a book that I knew was sad and about loss. And there were too many funerals in this story, as we know. But even in our saddest moments, Hashem wants us to laugh, wants us to celebrate what is working. So whatever, even in the hardest times, there were magical moments. And so this is what I wanted to convey in the book, that a hard life, a sad life, doesn't mean that there aren't wonderful, happy moments.
Where are your children?
My daughter is here with me in Jerusalem, and my son is back in Tokyo, living in his father's building as an independent young man. He works for a company, drum roll, called Kosher Japan. He spent 3 years in high school here, and he was in the Na'ale program, which is high school education for kids, basically from outside of Israel. And this was another Hashem blessing that there were 3 other Japanese kids in his class, which was unusual, unheard of. I mean, this is really a tribute to the power of Chabad to turn us all around. And not that the others were especially frum, but this sense of being with Yisrael, being with the Jewish people, was very, very strong. And my son, when he went back to Tokyo, my son is not especially frum, not yet. You hear me, Seiji? Okay, so he's not, but he's like a magnet to Chabad, and so this is where he wanted to go. Even though when he was in Israel, he didn't want to go to shul, but immediately upon returning to
Japan. He wanted to go back to Chabad and speak Hebrew with the children that he'd grown up with, who at the time he never knew how to speak Hebrew. So this was the kind of a, look at me, I can speak Hebrew now. So he's doing fantastically. I'm really proud of him, and also my daughter too.
How old are you?
My daughter is 23, and my son turns 19 in a week or so. Thank you. Thank you. It's really exciting. Yeah. Any other questions? So
you got married to this lovely man that you met at the clinic?
That's right. Yes, you could say that I married my sensei. Sensei means my teacher. And then the story was about turning that around and learning how to empower myself from within, how to strengthen myself, to take ownership of my life and my choices, and to do it with God's help.
What aspects of Japanese culture have empowered you or influenced you?
Oh, so many. I would say there's. Let's see how I could begin. I'll begin by scrolling back to '85 and when I got to Japan. I'm a Virgo, right? Born in August. I'm not especially orderly, but it comforts me. Routine, order, cleanliness, predictability, good manners, that things function, things work, that people are very respectful and very kind. And one of the things that moved me in '85 when I went there, and I don't think it happens anymore, but in '85, to be a foreign woman on the streets of Tokyo was pretty unusual. I'd be standing there with my map, trying to get to an interview, and I didn't know where I'd be. And on 4 different occasions, people stopped me, looked at the map, said, "Come with me." They took me to the door of my appointment, which meant getting on the train with me. Can you imagine? Getting on the train with me and taking me through busy train stations and up elevators and escalators and you name it. And
you were reading Japanese at all? You managed to...
At that point, no, but nothing in '85 on that first trip. But I thought, who are these people and what is this about? And I was just so moved by this experience. And so that was kind of the initiation for me, is the kindness, without wanting anything in return, except maybe they got a free English lesson on the way to the destination. You know, I have to give them credit for being a little bit wily in that regard. But it was really something. There's in their education is very formalized. It's cookie cutter, which is comforting, but it's also suffocating, as my children would experience being the child of a mother like me. It just didn't work for them. And so that's also part of the story, why it didn't work for them. So the things that I loved about the society, the reliability, the predictability, the choreography of the movements, everyone bows, everyone does a certain gesture, it's so predictable, it was wonderful. But when it came to my own children, I thought, this isn't working. I gotta get them out. And then what happens is I'm not going to tell you how it happens in the end. That my son came to Jerusalem, but it was traumatic because he had to be strong enough to make the decision himself. And at 14 years old, going on 15, it was a rite of passage. It was his journey to manhood in a matter of minutes that he had to make this decision. And I believe that is why he was chosen to, he was hired over college graduates for the job that he's doing now. He's really doing a very responsible job. I said to him, Seiji, at your age, I was working in a waxing parlor and I could barely talk to the customers. And here you are going on sales appointments with the heads of companies. Come on. And he goes, Mom, it was Israel. He goes, you had to speak up. You're dead meat in Israel. If I'm going to be Japanese here, forget it. So it's strengthened him to really mature very quickly and take on these girls.
Do you think if you had met the Japanese man here, whatever meeting encounter could have been, and you had settled here, had your children here, that thing with the children would never have happened the way it happened over there? Do you think if they had grown up with those, the kindergarten and
I can't even imagine. It's too hypothetical for me because my children look Japanese. They were born in Japan. They have Japanese names. They grew up under their Japanese names. My daughter now goes by the name of Miriam. My son's Hebrew name is Hillel, and they own those names in a Jewish or Israeli context. So, but I can't. It's like hypothesizing. What if I hadn't left New York?
Yeah.
What if my mother and my father had settled in London rather than moving to New York? Because my mother's from London. There were so many moving parts to this story that could have happened, but what happened was meant to be. It's very clear. I wanted to look back on my life as a celebration of choices and life lessons, that because of the choices were hard doesn't mean that I didn't learn from every experience, and that's really what I wanted to leave my children with as well. It was this understanding that we do flub, we do make mistakes in life, but we don't have to wallow in them for the rest of our lives. We can move beyond them and say, phew, I learned from that. Now bring on the next thing, right? Okay. Should I read a little more? Are we okay for time, or? Okay.
I was going to ask you about your other books that you have here.
Before anybody leaves, we can
Oh, you can wrap it. Oh.
All right.
I don't want to draw up when somebody isn't here.
I don't think she's finished.
No, I know this lady wants to go and I don't want to draw them up when everybody's here. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to answer about the books, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
Are you selling, these are the ones?
Yes, so the books are for sale for 80 shekels, and this is a story that you could read online in the Jerusalem Post. They didn't pay me royalties for using my cover art, but never mind.
Did you draw that picture yourself?
I did.
You're amazing.
I had a little help from my friend who's a graphic designer, so I gave her rough sketches, and then she made it beautiful. I mean, this is the truth. The calligraphy here, the W and the B,
Sorry, it's my alarm clock.
came from a Victorian lint brush, a sterling silver lint brush that I had inherited from my great aunt Vicky, who fortunately married somebody with the name W. So I just was able to steal the W, which is the lint brush is about 140 years old.
Wow.
So it was just so perfect, his name was W.F., Walter Falk, but I turned the F into a B, and so it all worked out in the end. So that's my book, and I thought that because I talk about it in my book, my memoir about my art and my journey as a writer who morphed into an artist and an art teacher, that this is my tool that I use to this day to teach art workshops. And it's a guidebook and a deck of cards. And very simply, people are very judgmental about their art, usually, especially if they've had a bad experience with an art teacher or some as a child. So I wanted to create a tool that would release them from judging themselves. Oh, this person's art is great, and this person's art is great, mine is like a kid, this kind of thing. So instead of focusing on people around you, you take a card and you put it, without looking, underneath sketch paper. You draw a work of art with a word on the back, and the word can be like relaxation, or it could be energy, so whatever word you want you put, and then you draw something, and not especially focusing on the word. You've already put the word down, but you're using rainbow colors. This is my whole thing. The cards are all rainbow colors. And then after you've drawn something, let's say I drew this cover, and then I'm getting into my judgmental head. It's not this, it's not that. Well, the card will stop it immediately. I flip it over, and this is the card I get. And then I'm going to look at this card next to the work of art. In art historical language, it's called juxtaposition, where you put two works next to each other, and you get insights by looking between the two. And then you start a conversation with yourself or with the group about what connections you see between the card and the artwork. And this is a way that leads people to make amazing breakthroughs in self-confidence, intuitive development, and creativity. And I train people, mostly in Japan now, but a bit in Israel too, to become teachers of this method, so that they can actually go out and do what I'm doing with their own communities. So I've been doing this since the year 2000, and I brought it with me to Japan, to Jerusalem, and I translated. Definitely not me, I had somebody translate this into Hebrew, and because the artwork was made for Japanese in Japan, I thought, no, I'm going to use images from Israel. And so if you look at the difference between the cards and the Israeli edition, you'll see a lot of scenes from Yerushalayim. So that's my little thing about what I do, and there's a website called genesiscards.com, and you're very welcome to take a card and look me up, see what's going on. These are sets of 5 postcards that are for sale for 10 shekels for the set, and whoops, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm excited to say that 2 of these from this series are in Mayor Leon's office in City Hall. That in City Hall, that they were chosen as part of a group exhibition of landscapes of Jerusalem. So it's a 1-year exhibition. So part of those pictures are there. So, and I want to say too that I found that being artistic took a lot of the pressure off of me as a writer. That I was very serious until I was 35, 36, and always in my head, and I wanted to get out of it and play and have fun, and I thought, I'm going to go back to being a kid. if I had known that it was going to lead to a business and being an art teacher and this, I would have run in the other direction. I just did it for play and joy. And then what happened was the pictures were really from the heart and very childlike, and it appealed to people. So I started to be offered exhibitions, and so that was how the art thing developed. That it just came out of this need, a personal need, to relax and to just return to a kind of innocent place inside of myself. And I thought, this is also I thought this is very timely. I started doing Genesis art when we all first got our first emails, and we were all getting on the internet for the first time, and the world was changing before our eyes, just the way Zoom changed us last year. To get on internet for the first time, I thought, all these images we're being bombarded by other people's images, and we're going to forget our own rich visual resource inside of us, that we have all the art within us if we don't start making it ourselves. So that was my thought in 1997, 96, 97, when I started really getting into the art, because it was self-preservation that got me to do that.
Do you teach children or teenagers or just adults?
I did in Japan, and if there was a group, a kind of a ready-made group that I would, yes. I taught various groups. I was teaching here at Yachad, the Center for Adults with Disabilities, and they're amazing. They're incredibly intuitive. It was a thrill to work with them. In Japan, I've worked with the deaf, with handicapped. I've done prison work with the art.
You work in Japanese?
Yes.
Became fluent enough that you're able to give lessons?
Well, don't ask my kids if I'm fluent enough, but because I get by.
Did your Japanese sound like your husband's English?
Exactly. That's why I have to be charitable with him, because, exactly. But he has a mean vocabulary, and my vocabulary is pretty good too in Japanese. I know some good words, but it doesn't mean that I know. It's only in the fields that interest me that I can really speak. Someone talks to me on a topic I know nothing about, I'm in trouble. So, but luckily, when it comes to art and intuition and spirituality, I could hold my own in Japan. I think. What do you think? Have you had enough from
Liane, I think you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Stimulated our taste and our fascination with your life, and I wish you lots of good fortune. Keep
Thank
it up.
you. Thank you.
Anybody got 99? Give us number 99.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll end here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think her daughter who's teaching doing art therapy in a school for kids with special needs.
Please
I will show her this, and I take a book because I want her to. You never know. People get ideas. You get ideas for your therapy. You get ideas for your work through encounters with others.
Does she speak English?
She wrote a book about her life. Born here, born to English father, Danish mother. He's from London.
And you're from
Mixed marriage, but but we met here.
Do you know the Robinsons? They're from.
They are